Hey, it's Mike with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Monday. It is May 3rd. This will be our chart lesson for today, and we're starting a new month. April's in the books. They seem like they just keep flying by. But real quickly, a couple of things I wanted to discuss just prior to getting started on the chart lesson. Not a lot of trades today. There were quite a few up until about 10:30, and then from there on, it's just not much happened. There was a little movement this afternoon after 2 o'clock, but it's a little bit late then. So if you didn't trade earlier today, you probably didn't get much opportunity. So this is all just too flat and too congestive and just not much going on there. There's one possibility here. But before we get started on the chart lesson, I did want to announce that our second entry indicator is now available. Just go to the home page and you'll see a link there. It'll be in a red box. It says now available, Pat second entry indicator. I continue to get questions about it almost daily, so I wanted to make that announcement so people know it's available. I'll put a link in the box down below as well, so it'll go directly to it. So if you can't find it on the website, the link will be in the description below if you're interested in it. So uh, it works pretty well. Let me just put it on here. I'll show it to you real quick. I'm going to try to do this quickly so the chart lesson is not too long. But if you come down here to Pat's second entry indicator, and you can actually toggle on and off quite a few things here. Some people, I like to see the zero. If you're learning, you're probably going to want to see the zeros, which starts the count over. Some people want to take that off just to keep from cluttering up the chart. And this is just our first release, version 1. Obviously, we'll probably do tweaks to it as we go, but this is what we got so far. And you can see the 0, 1, 2s there. Now, when you get in congestion like this, don't try to trade second entries. And I want to make this very clear. This is not a trading software. If anybody tells you they got a second entry trading software that tells you what trades to take, don't believe that, because all this does is give you the counts and show you where the second entries are. It can't tell you if the context is proper or not, and it's just impossible to do that. This was hard enough to write as it was. So if anybody tells you they got a second entry indicator that's going to tell you where to enter and you're going to make money consistently day after day, don't believe that, because it's just not possible. It will show you second entries, and second entries are pretty powerful. And even if you're probably reading the chart wrong, you can take mostly second entries and you might do okay, as long as you're not in congestion and going sideways like this, where if you try to trade in here, you probably just get chopped to pieces basically. And you don't want to do that. So you need to be able to read the chart and find the second entries, but you can clearly see them there. One thing I did want to make clear too, that make sure you understand, is that if you see an engulfing bar involved in the equation, the software is not very good at I guess what the word I'm trying to look for here is the engulfing bars can confuse the count and the software, and there's just no way to really get around that. So if you see an engulfing bar, just like here's one right here. Notice that you got a 0 and you come down and there's a first entry right there. That one is actually correct on a first entry, and then it comes down and it does give you a second entry down here. But a lot of times on these engulfing bars, it will get confused and it'll throw the count off. I'm just going to see if there's one in here that maybe does get confused. It doesn't always do that. Sometimes it'll still count right. Here's another one, 0, 1, 2. That may not be. Yep, that's an engulfing bar as well. And you can see it still gets it right. So it's not always wrong, but occasionally on these engulfing bars, it's when it kind of gives you, it's when it happens in congestion that it really kind of throws the software off. And so if you see it, basically what we've decided to do is just tell people, if you see, now here's one right here. Notice you're working down, you get a first entry, then you're working down and you get a second entry. But again, it counts that one correctly. So it's actually actually it shows the second entry right here, but the second entry was when it actually broke above. But so far, all these engulfing ones, it's counted it right. But sometimes it will, if it goes up and down, and then you get another inside bar, it can get confused. So if you see an engulfing bar, just scrutinize it very closely, or just throw that out and wait on the next one. That would be my recommendation, is just to especially if you're not very good with second entries, just just throw it out and wait until you get something that's a little clear. That would be my suggestion. The other thing to take note of is note that it always puts the count over or under the lowest bar in the swing, because that identifies the signal bar. So it doesn't necessarily indicate that's where the second entry triggered always, because it may be the bar after, if it's an inside bar, something like that. So just understand that it will always put the number above or below the swing high. And it will only show the second entry if the new high, new low, and the first entry have triggered already, and it gives a chance to trigger a second entry. So you can play around with it some. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it here. Maybe we'll do a video dedicated to this later. But I just wanted to show it to you, put it on the chart, and kind of give you the basics of it. But just looking here, notice that you got a new low, so you got a zero count. You work up, it broke lower right there is your first entry, and when it broke lower right there is your second entry. Now it has a zero right above that because it made a new swing high. So you get a first entry and then a second entry right there. Obviously that wasn't a very good second entry, because we're really trending down, or really just kind of going sideways. So just understand, because somebody's already asked me, why is it showing numbers on top and bottom? Well, the red are the shorts and the green are the longs. It just counts second entry, so it's not telling you trades. So it gives you the count from both sides at all times, and that'll help you find the failures and so forth. I would recommend that if you're not experienced, very experienced chart trader, stay away from the second entries, because you'll just get chopped up and confused and have a lot of trouble. But let's just remove that just so it doesn't clutter up the chart. But it's available. Again, I'll put the link in the description box below, and if you're interested, you can go take a look at it, and it's available. So anyway, let's move on to the chart lesson. Clearly a range day. You can see that we're straight sideways. Look at the EMA. Whenever you see the EMA looks like a roller coaster and prices are swinging above and below, that's a range, and that's sideways action. And so that's the clearest way to know for sure if you're in a range or trending. Now we got a little bit of a trend down here. Notice that the EMA is pointing down, and all the price action is consistently below the EMA, but it's just a trend down within the range. And we never really trended very well. We trended a little bit up here, couldn't even get back to the highs, and trended down again. We just got stuck in this real tight range here, and there's no consistent highs. There's really no consistent lows here. We did bounce down here a few times, but there's too much congestion, no setup. You might have taken a trade right here to the long side. I didn't mark it, but I'll put a green arrow there just so I don't forget to talk about it. But anyway, let's zoom in a little bit here, go through the trades, and wrap up today. But we were clearly in this tight range here. We failed out the bottom, went up, failed out the top, and then we made a higher low right here. Notice your new low, and you came back, and it gives you a chance to go long here. You should have room to get out. I think this gets exactly 6 ticks, and that's why we don't go for that's why we go for 4 ticks, because it takes 6 ticks, one for your buy stop and then an extra one for your limit order to exit. Occasionally you can get out with 5 ticks, but to know for sure you're going to get out, you need 6 ticks. So we got just enough ticks to get out right there, and then it turns back down, and notice you get a little 2 legs down. So that's a second entry long right there. Notice that new swing high, first entry, second entry. Not a very good setup, and we're not really looking for second entries in a range like this, so, or a tight congestion like that. But we just continue to go sideways. There is a failed second entry short here. Notice that new swing low, it's lower than the last one. So first entry, second entry, and it does bounce off the highs. I didn't mark this one because of the channel working up, and we've already had what looks like an overshoot. Now it's possible this is the high and that's a midline, but my feeling is probably neither one of these are correct because it never does come back and confirm that. My guess is that's your channel and that's your first break, and then you push to a new high and then you turn down. So that's the way I looked at it in the end. Early on, I was looking for a possible trend up there. It just didn't work out. And if you saw it like this, you may take that trade. It is a failed second entry short. It is a bounce off support. I'd want to see this support hold another time really before I bought it. So I think it's a little risky to go long there. But notice we get the break of this little short-term channel. We move up, we make a new high. We try to go higher again, and you get a failure. And so I like going short just to try to ride this back. We're probably coming back to the other side, but the key is you really want to have room back to the EMA. And if you don't, you might have to use a limit order or something there to enter. And of course, we run back down to the middle of the big range and we just kind of bounce along. You can't enter in this. It's too tight, too congestive. There's no way to know what prices if they're going higher or lower here. So just sit tight. And in a few minutes, you get a failed second entry short here. Notice the new low, first entry, second entry. It's almost kind of a repeat pattern we just saw. So you might go long right there on the repeat pattern. What does it do? It does exactly what it did last. It runs up, tests the high, makes a lower high with a big bearish bar, and you get a chance to go short. I marked this one green instead of red just simply because it's right back into the EMA, and that's congestion. It too easily could fail, come back up and stop you out. But if you just wait a few minutes later, you get a failed second entry long and a chance to go short, and this is looking like we're working lower here. So I like that one. And again, you get just enough room to get out here. Actually, you get a couple extra ticks on this one. So, but you got enough room to get out. And then it turns up, runs back up and tests again. Now you get a triple test across here, and this actually breaks higher and turns down. And that does trigger a second entry, even though we're not that interested in a second entry here. If you get a second entry that meets our other criteria, then pay attention to it. But this breaks higher and turns down. I'd probably wait on that to close and put a sell stop right there rather than going short below on the go. You could enter on the engulfing bar, but I think you're better to wait. And I just like this one because it's really a triple test. Notice you made the high, you test it once. You could look at this as once, twice, and that's like a triple test. And we've kind of tested that multiple times and it's been holding. So I like going short there. Notice that's a new swing high, then you try to go higher once, twice, it fails. Nice bearish bar below the EMA. Plenty of room back to the middle of the range. I like going short there. And that turns out to be a pretty good trade. If you catch that one, you could ride this pretty much all the way to the lows. And then we kind of go into this little range. And so I like this trade just simply because it's a failed breakout. And notice you tried to go higher once, twice, and that's the first time it broke lower after that second entry long. So you could look at that as a failure on a failed breakout. That's the reason I like it. Otherwise, I'd say you have to skip that trade. But with the trap and the failed breakout, and if you don't like that one, a few minutes later you get a lower high and it's actually a second entry short. And you get a pretty good signal bar. So we haven't reached the lows yet. We came close. So there's a good chance we could run back down. And that is a second entry short as well. So I like that trade. And of course, we're just bouncing along. And I talked about this one. I don't know if you want to go long here or not. It's a little bit aggressive, but you can see this that we had some support there before. The actual overnight lows are a little bit lower. Actually, the overnight lows are really way down here. So, but we were finding support right in here. So when you made all that little congestion that far away from the EMA and you get this little break lower that fails, you may ride that back. Just make sure you got enough room to get out there. This is probably going to act like a trap. So pretty good signal bar. It's just it's no rejection there though. So that's very concerning, but that one little break lower and then it breaks higher and you can see it went on up that time. And that's what they do. They couldn't take it higher, so they fell it out the bottom and trap the shorts in. The longs probably have their bias safety stops there. They trap the longs out and then they reverse it, and that gives it momentum to jump up and take off like that. So pretty good entry. Break new high, and then look how it shoots right back through the EMA. Tries to go higher once, twice. It didn't actually break higher here, but there's also a second entry short, and this does confirm the trend line right there, and it's a pretty bearish bar. It's a little bit congestive, but so that's why I marked it green, but I kind of like that trade. This one's played out, and you got a new one starting, so I liked it. Of course, we run all the way back down. This is all just way too tight. No real setups. The only thing you might have taken is this one. This is basically a double bottom. So first entry, it pushes through, pulls back. Second entry, it does confirm that trend line. It does bounce off the EMA. It does provide support here. Technically, you got to go long above this bar right here, and this is truly your signal bar. So I don't think it's worth fooling with, but it's probably going to act like a trap. And the trap actually occurred on the break above this bar, even though this is your signal bar and your safety stop has to go below here. On a regular trade, you couldn't do that, but on a failure, it's wherever it breaks higher. So this is a second entry short that fails, and that's where it broke higher. And you can see we kind of tested that 3 different times there on 3 different bars. And so if it breaks higher, we're probably going higher. And that took us up into 2 o'clock. I don't see anything else in here you can trade to the long side, and you wouldn't want to go short yet. So that pretty much did it for the day. Like I said, after about 10:30, there's just not much going on here. There's a couple of green ones. Really, after about 10:15, there's 3 green trades, and that's it. But you can clearly see how flat this is. You could probably even look for a range in here, like so. That's the way I would look at that. And so you might look at this as a short on a failed breakout, but this trend line's still in play, and I just don't think you want to go short there, especially at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It's a little bit late, so you might get burned, but you could argue for that one to be green if you see it like this. And we'll just make this one yellow, so it just a little clear and easier to see. But there's clearly a range in there. It's just not very consistent on the highs or lows. That's the problem with it. So you really got to trend up, a trend down, and then sideways, and another trend up. And we do go higher that time. So that's what I saw. I hope you had a good Monday. Hope you had a good weekend. We'll get this week rolling. Again, I'll put a link to the second entry indicator in the description down there if you want to go take a look at that. But I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.